Okay, welcome to the next video in my series about using AI and other tools to help you with your writing. This one I'm going to cover one of my favorite tools, which just in general is random generators. Kind of the precursor to AI, really. Only a lot more specific, less robust, obviously. You can't just ask questions. It's a specific thing. It's made to create randomly generated output for various things. This is one of my favorite websites, fantasynamegenerators.com. There are others, Seventh Sanctum. Um, there's loads and loads of them. If you just type in a search for whatever it is you're looking for, a random generator, you will find loads of different things. And a lot of it is going to be for fantasy stuff because a lot of them are actually made as tools for, say, like Dungeons and Dragons and other tabletop RPG play, but you can use them all for writing. So I lost my file for the last video, so we're going to kind of start over with just building out an idea. So let's go with something not too far off the beaten path, but something a little bit interesting, perhaps, maybe, hopefully. So let's look at some futuristic names. Let's go off of fantasy a little bit, and we're going to go into sci-fi a bit. So I like this first one right here, Armanis. That's an interesting enough name. And a lot of these can be used as first names and last names. Let's just go with Linux. Aramis, Armanis, Linux. Okay, so this is going to be our protagonist. And who is Armanis Linux? This is how you get started when you're just searching for something to jump off from. The next video will be about taking little bits and pieces like this and building them up in ChatGPT and then, bouncing ideas around and just generally how you take the seed of an idea for a story or a few little bits and pieces and build it up. This one we're going to use random generators just to give us some jumping off points. So we've got a name. Now we can come over to places and locations and let's look for, say, a space station name. Space Station Colony. They have, can do it in French, but I'm just going to go with English. Asphodel. I think that's poisonous. Paradox, no. Halo, no. Chagris, no. Nebula, too generic. Pilgrim, Osiris Base, that's kind of interesting. Ignis, that could be interesting. Terminus, Terminus Station, Far Out Colony. Actually, we could do that. So we have our protagonist, our main protagonist, we have our location, and we're going to say Terminus Station is a, let's just go with something kind of generic, Terran uh, colony, confederation, confederation, Terran colony confederation. So the TCC is going to be our kind of the government. We can say, close my eyes and hit the numbers. 373 star systems with Earth Terra as the center. Colonized star system. So let's just go ahead. I'll save this after I'm done with the video. We can go ahead and just drop this to a different thing because it is actually its own thing. Terminus station. Let's say it's exploration. Base on the edge of populated space. And our monosyllabic. So this is the thing. Do we want our protagonist to be experienced? Do we want him to be a rookie? Is he somebody that's from this station? Is he from inside, deeper in TCC space? And this is his first time on the Outer Rim, as it would be called, probably. Or just the edge, maybe. Now, I personally like the fish out of water. That's kind of why I like isekai, portal fantasy type stuff. Or just anything where the main character, there is a reason, it makes sense for things to be explained to them when it is necessary, because that it simplifies the exposition aspect of creating science fiction and fantasy. Is if you have a character that is new to the world, doesn't understand it, it makes sense for something that need to be explained to them when it comes time for that to need to be done. But of course, what you're really doing is explaining it to the audience as well, and it just makes it a little bit easier, makes more sense. Whereas if it's a character that was born in a particular time frame, a world, or whatever, then you have to deal with that issue of why would something that they should know about be discussed. The audience needs to be informed of certain aspects of the world, magic or science or whatever it is. The characters living in that world already understand it. The audience won't necessarily. So you have to figure out that fine line between, show don't tell, but making sure that it's imparted correctly. So it can be a bit tricky, but if you have a fish out of water type character, a lot of times you can just say, well, the explanation is happening because they don't actually know what the hell is going on, necessarily. So, I do like fish out of water characters. So in this case, I'm going to say that Aramis, I keep wanting to say Aramis, so I'm going to change it. Aramis. So, not quite Artemis, but Aramis. Aramis Linux. So Aramis Linux is going to be cadet, right out of what shall we call it? We can just call it the Explorers Academy. Explorers Academy. We can say he's 25-ish. What kind of direction do we want to take this character in? Do we want to have some romance stuff and make him, generic pretty boy space pilot kind of guy, or oh, let's see. I'm not sure what I want to go for appearance, but let's say his grandfather was an explorer, mapped 50 plus star systems in his time. Aramis wants to follow in his footsteps. Okay. So we've got some seeds here. We've got a character. We've got a location. We've got a place. Well, we've got a setting and we've got a government that can correspond to all of this. All still very generic, but these sorts of things do tend to be generic. You can build it out later. You can change it around and make it something, maybe try to make it something a little less generic. But sometimes generic is fine because it's not important. And that's one of the biggest things I love about using random generators. Coming back to the original point of the video, is that there are lots of things that really are not that important. Like, pick any major franchise. James Bond, Harry Potter, Frodo Baggins. They could have been named anything. Obviously, Frodo had to be a Baggins because it was built on the Hobbit, and that's Bilbo Baggins. But he could have been anything else. It could have been Pippin Baggins, and Frodo was the sidekick. Or could have used completely different names altogether. James Bond could have been Hank or Henry. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something. Uh, Henry Michelson. Sure. Henry Michelson. Harry Potter could have been anybody. You know, the names are iconic because the franchises have become iconic. The point I'm trying to make here is that the names themselves really don't matter. You know, you can come over here to Europe and English, British, and male John Rose. Instead of James Bond, it could have been John Rose. Or you can come to historic and Elizabethan, which a lot of the, well, this is later on. I think Victorian is more where you'll find Harry Potter type names. But yeah, you can look through here. Perry Newman, that's a little bit weird, but David Burton, Michael Chester, or let's see where there's Victorian. Yeah, this is where you'll find a lot of very similar names to Harry Potter, like Bertie, Bert, Jeffrey. Well, some of these are very much still in use. But Edwin Moody, you know, Mad Eye Moody, Corbett Cochran, Byron Henry. There's also, it could have been anything. You know, Harry Potter, Ron Weasley, Ronald Weasley, Hermione Granger. Could have been anything. It could have been Stella Carby, Connie Howlett, Nanny McNabb. Isn't that actually a thing? You know, Juliet Adams, Vesta Chapman, Tessie Farrell. You know, all of these are their names. And they don't become iconic, recognizable names until the fiction itself becomes iconic and recognizable. So things like just Discworld, Ankh-Morpork. You know, it's hard to say that, you know, that is a very specific kind of name, but it's literally Ankh and more pork. So it's not like it's some amazingly, outrageously clever combination of words. It was just a name until it wasn't just a name. It became something. So don't sweat the small stuff. Is kind of the lesson of this video. Is that if you're having trouble thinking of something, use a random generator, because ultimately it doesn't really matter that much until you make it into something that matters. It's just a name or a place or something. You could have, like right here. Just I noticed the gym. Let's Brawn Boot Camp. A pump connection. Okay. Big Muscle World. Not all of them are particularly varied. Rebel Gym, Ferocious Fitness, Athletics Titans, Fitness Habits, Pump Rooms. That sounds more like a club. Atlas Zone, Monster Fitness Center, Ferocious Fitness Center, just Fitness Center, Bulge Gymnasium, Olympian Stars. Okay, I like that. So we can have the Olympian Stars gym can be a location on the space station that's going to matter. And we're going to come in here and let's get something, let's go with an Egyptian name, because why not? And it can be a female Egyptian name. Messiah Abadi Niran Malouf. Okay, Niran Malouf. Niran Malouf. I do have another point about names that you pick. I will get to that in just a moment, but let's go ahead and do this. So Niran Malouf, owner, operator, fitness nut, yoga expert, oh, let's see, what's going to be her role? Not necessarily a love interest, but we could have Marwa. Malouf. Daughter. Let's make her 22. Wants to be an explorer. Taking courses in xenobotany. And now we have a love interest for our main character. Potential love interest. She doesn't have to be a love interest, but see, that's as simple as it is. You know, we write this story, maybe it's a really good story, and it gets turned into a movie. Obviously this is all just fantasizing, hypothetical, but the point is that we could be creating something right now that potentially could be a huge franchise. Will it be? Probably not. I'm not even sure I would continue on with this beyond a teaching exercise. But the point is that it could be. And it's a sort of thing like Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Leia Organa were not iconic names. They were not iconic characters until they became iconic characters. The Millennium Falcon. It was just a name for a starship. But it became iconic. So again, don't sweat the small stuff. With one very important point. Try to stick to names that are easier to say. It can be unfortunate with a lot of fantasy name generators. Let's come to elf names right quick and just run this a few times. So Lorelei, we could simplify that to Lorelei or Lorelei. Zeralia. Zerali. See, this is where Zera. Cut the LEI. You don't need it. Just Lorelei 0. Alencia Olahorn. That's a good one. Tara. Tiriani. Tiriani Crafer. Okay, the first part may be a little iffy. Rania, that's easy. Kitomo. Kitumo, that one's not too bad. Ore Zilro. Zilro. Where you really need to be careful is with your vowels, because when you have a bunch of vowels together, like, or just two, like this AE, it's hard to know how to pronounce that. So it's easier to just go aura or ori. And Zilro is a bit much. At least that's Zil. I want to pronounce it Zilro, and that's where you want to avoid problems. What you'd really want to do is just get rid of the L, Zyro, or Zero, but Zyro. It's just when you're, especially with fantasy name generators, and even with real world name generators, because if you're going to use something like Egyptian, Middle Eastern names, things that are not common, make sure it's something that feels legitimate, but is also going to be fairly easy for the general populace. If you're writing in English, make it something that English speakers are going to be able to read, understand, pronounce. So, like my Cassis. I don't know if that's how it's properly pronounced, probably not, but it is something that as an English speaker, I can read that and pronounce it fairly easily. So that is my one little bit of advice, in addition to just the general point of the video again, which is don't sweat the small stuff. Don't let yourself get bogged down, don't get stuck on things that ultimately probably won't matter when it comes to names. And you can, again, places and locations, there is a description generator. So if you have, say, they have clothing description generator. So fancy clothing, right here, we can get a suit description right there, or a dress, or there's plant descriptions and potions, prophecies, quests, religions. There's all sorts of them. Weapons. They even have some things like a haiku generator, idioms, epitaphs, birthday wishes, religious commandments, riddles. And of course, you can always use AI to build those things out or to simplify them. The point is to not get bogged down on things that ultimately don't matter. You don't need to waffle or wiffle waffle back and forth on, oh, should this character's dress going to this ball be this thing or this thing or this thing? Just do a random generator. If you don't like one, try another one. And, you know, don't sit there for an hour just hitting the generator over and over again. It's easy to do that, unfortunately. But, you need a dress. Okay? And now you can go through here and pick out bits and pieces that you want. You don't need all of it. It doesn't give you a color. But it gives you a description. Or again, one of the other one was clothing, rags. And gives you male and female. So, yeah, don't sweat the small stuff. Somebody's going to do a rude gesture in your fantasy world. Here's a gesture generator for hand gestures. or even just whole humanoid races. You know, and again, this is just one site. There are loads and loads of sites that can help you with this sort of stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff. So those are really the 2 points of this video is one, don't sweat the small stuff. Don't get bogged down in minutia. Two, make your names pronounceable. Sorry about that. Something that's easy to read and say. And you can literally just go through a random generator site and pick out names and places and things and start building out a plot. You know, just the little bits and pieces to start with, and then you build out from there. So those are really the main points of the video. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to check out my other channels. I do music and gaming and stuff. I'll have links in the description for all that. And I do have out a book now. It's called Fistful of Fairy Tales. You can find it on Amazon for now. And I will see you on the next one. Later.